Hello everyone, my name is Robert. Welcome back to Unraveling Politics. This is a show where I discuss the political news of the day and I provide my analysis in a way that everyone can understand. Thank you for joining me this episode. We don't have quite so much to talk about, not because things are not going on, but because I kind of want to focus on a couple of different things this episode that aren't super major. They're not like very time consuming like in the last episode or the debate. Speaking of debate, let me just throw out there will be another debate. This one will be for the vice president, and it will be on October 1st, which is tomorrow, and that will be on CBS News. I do not know the exact time. I'm assuming it'll be 8 or 9 o'clock Eastern, so that will be between J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, Donald Trump's running mate, and of course, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, Kamala Harris' running mate. Speaking of Kamala Harris, I want to throw out here that I was doing some reading, because this entire campaign, I was thinking, well, is this campaign really any different than 2016? Because 2016 was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, as many of us remember, and a woman versus a man, and now this campaign is Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, a woman versus a man. And I've talked about this before, but is this campaign really any different? And I have to argue, yes, it really is. Things have changed a lot in the last 8 years, and I'll throw out there it's been 8 years. I was a big Hillary Clinton fan, mostly to annoy my parents, or specifically one of my parents. But I was a big Hillary Clinton fan. I still think she would have been a fantastic president. But, of course, we'll never really know. A lot has changed since 2016. And Hillary was very, very cringy. I will admit, she was very cringy when she ran for president in 2008, and in 2016, and then even now, when she was speaking at the DNC, she all used the same rhetoric of the highest glass ceiling, and the glass ceiling is supposed to be the woman being elected president. I don't know where this came from. I don't know if she came up with it or somebody else came up with it, but it's incredibly cringy. I find it, especially as a man, I find it very nauseating. And I think a lot of center to center right men would agree with me. Let me play a couple clips so you can hear 2008 Hillary Clinton.
Although we weren't able to shatter that hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it. And the light is shining through like never before, filling us all with the hope and the sure knowledge that the path will be a little easier next time.
And then here's 2016 Hillary Clinton. And by the way, I know the audio in here is bad. That's exactly what it sounds like. It's not an editing thing. That's just how it sounds.
And to the young people in particular, I hope you will hear this. I have, as Tim said, spent my entire adult life fighting for what I believe in. I've had successes and I've had setbacks, sometimes really painful ones. Many of you are at the beginning of your professional, public, and political careers. You will have successes and setbacks too. This loss hurts, but please never stop believing that fighting for what's right is worth it. We need you to keep up these fights now and for the rest of your lives. And to all the women, and especially the young women, who put their faith in this campaign and in me, I want you to know that nothing has made me prouder than to be your champion. I know we have still not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling, but someday someone will, and hopefully sooner than we might think right now.
And then even at the DNC, just a month ago, she was still using the same rhetoric.
We're not just electing a president, we're uplifting our nation. We're opening the promise of America wide enough for everyone. Together, we put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. And tonight, tonight so close to breaking through once and for all. I want to tell you what I see through all those cracks. On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States.
Luckily, Kamala Harris is not being that stupid. Hillary has clearly learned no lessons. It's been 8 years, well, 16 if you're considering 2008, and she has learned not a single lesson about running for president. Now, what has changed since 2016? Well, if you remember, there was the Women's March in 2017. That was the day after Trump was inaugurated. That was a huge, huge demonstration all over the world, really. Then there was the Me Too. I don't know what you call that, the Me Too movement in 2017 to 18. We had a record number of women elected to Congress in 2018. Then there was the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe in 2022. And of course, we've had abortion referendums in 2023. And then Nikki Haley got 4.3 million votes and 19.7% of the popular vote in the primary earlier this year. So you can really see here, women have become, and I should have asked Joe about this, and I'll have to ask him if he comes back on the show. Women have really become politically active. They're a lot more active than they were 6 years ago, at least women on the left, because of these things. And then, of course, Nikki Haley, that's more women on the right, but those are probably, Nikki Haley's more of a centrist candidate, so it's probably more appealing to center-right voters, women voters, and of course, lots of men voted for Nikki Haley as well, but the idea is that women are a bigger and bigger part of politics than when Hillary Clinton ran 8 years ago. And there's a big turn around from the cringy glass ceiling rhetoric in 2016. So that's just kind of what I want to throw out there. I don't have much else to say about the election, except I will say that Kamala Harris, as of the filming of this, I'm filming this on Saturday, is still the favorite. She has a couple of different paths to win the election. She could win the 3 Rust Belt states. She could win 2 of the Rust Belt states and then pick up a state in the South, like Georgia. She could try to aim for Georgia, North Carolina, and maybe Arizona. That's probably the most unlikely path. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's only the most viable path, if you ask me, would be Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina, and then Arizona. I think that's the most likely. I think him winning all 3 Rust Belt states is not quite as likely as it was even a couple of weeks ago. If he continues on this path, then he's going to be in big, big trouble. Alrighty. So just want to throw that out there. Another thing about the election, this is kind of more like nerdy stuff. Since 1964, no Democrat has ever been elected president, except when there was a third party, like when Bill Clinton ran. No Democrat has ever been elected president with less than 50% of the vote and a lead of less than 2.2%, except for when Bill Clinton ran for president. So Hillary, she got 2.2%. So did Jimmy Carter, by the way, in 1976. Although things have changed quite a lot since then. So I would say that Kamala Harris should try to get at least 49.5%, maybe 50. I think because Joe Biden got 50%, she needs almost half the electorate. And then Donald Trump could easily win the election with just 46, no, not 46, with 48% of the vote because of the demographics I talked about, or Joe talked about in the last episode. Alrighty, let me throw out here. This is really my last major story of the day. I know this is a bit of a short episode, but this is a little bit more in depth. Congress averted a government shutdown, thankfully, because this would have been pretty chaotic, especially for Republicans, right before the general election. It has been pushed off to December the 20th, I believe, which is the last Friday before Christmas. Yep, it is the last Friday before Christmas, and that essentially means Congress will need to find a way to fund the government again, at least one more time while Joe Biden is president, maybe even more than that. Okay, so there's not much in this latest bill, because it was a continuing resolution, which essentially extends government funding at current levels until December the 20th. What's more important, I think, is the future. Because the future is always the most important. Let's compare the 2 economic policies. And I was reading an article about this, and I think it's incredibly important. I was reading it in The Hill. Trump has proposed $8 trillion worth of tax cuts. $8 trillion. And he does not really have a way to pay for this. One of the ways to help reduce it is $900 billion in less. By the way, the $8 trillion is on top of the $8 trillion extra is on top of the roughly $2 trillion deficits we're already running, and the $8 trillion would be over 10 years. So he wants to cut $900 billion of green energy tax breaks that Biden put in, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, and then raise $4 trillion from tariffs. So that's about almost $5 trillion, but he wants to spend $8 trillion. And then Kamala is slightly better. She wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. That hasn't really fully been defined. Biden's his plan has been no household over $400,000 a year will have a tax increase. I don't know if Kamala's keeping that. We'll have to see. There's Harris wants to do a $25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers, which would absolutely do nothing. In fact, it would only make it worse because we don't. It's not that people can't afford homes. Well, that is true. There's not enough homes. It's a supply problem, not a demand problem. And then, of course, she wants to put $50,000 in tax cuts for entrepreneurs, which I don't have any necessarily opposition to that. So her plan would cost $1.5 trillion over 10 years. So that would be $1.5 trillion over 10 years compared to Trump's extra $3 trillion over 10 years. And I already mentioned the U.S. is running a deficit of $2 trillion a year. And then we are currently at over $35 trillion, which is immense. I cannot believe how much spending we are doing. This is insane. It is insane. I can't believe it. There was a time, I remember when it was $16 trillion, and that was in 2014, I think it was. So if you think about it, we've gone up $18 trillion in 10 years. $18 trillion, that's insane. I don't know how any way to say that. If you're struggling to understand what a trillion is more years than the universe has even existed. A trillion is more money than any single person has ever had in human history. $1 trillion is about the value of Microsoft and Apple. The two companies separate, so that combined it would be $2 trillion. Literally, that is how much money that is. That is an insane amount of money. Senator Rand Paul, he was in this Hill article, I think, and that was very. He's been more consistent. Republicans have really they claim to be about low taxes, which is true, but they're also they especially more recently have been about high spending, low taxes, high spending. Very much like Liz Truss was over in the UK. I do worry that sometime in 2025, when we decide to renew the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which will cost $4.2 trillion over 10 years, assuming that even gets to Congress, we would have no way to pay for it. And then just like in the UK in 2022, I'm not going to get into it fully because this is an American politics show. It's where Liz Truss, who is the new prime minister, delivered a budget that had billions and billions is a lot more for them than it is for us, billions of pounds of uncosted borrowing. And there was no way to pay for it. The plan was, it's gonna grow our economy, which is kind of the exact same thing that the Republicans have been saying for years. And instead, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act didn't really grow the economy all that much. The economy wasn't really booming in 2018 and 2019 after it was implemented, and of course then there was the pandemic. And the Bush tax cuts, they ended up, a recession happened not long after that. And then the Reagan tax cuts, there was a recession after that. So I'm not saying the tax cuts cause recessions, because correlation is not equal to causation. But what I am saying is that it's not good at preventing economic recessions. And Rand Paul noted that $8 trillion was spent by Trump. $8 trillion was spent by Biden-Harris, or it will be by the time the administration is over. And then here's all some more expensive stuff. Trump and Harris both want to remove tax on tips. That'll cost $100 to $200 billion over 10 years. So that'll be about $10 to $20 billion a year. Great. It's not that much money, but it's certainly not making it better. Trump wants to abolish the SALT tax cap. And the SALT cap is the state and local tax cap, where it used to be, and it was much higher before, or it might not have even existed before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And it was implemented to keep it cheaper, so it wouldn't be super expensive. It mostly benefits blue states who have higher taxes, because what you can do is, if say you paid $15,000 in local taxes. You used to be able to write all of that off of your federal taxes, or by the way, state and local. Now there's a cap. It's $10,000. So instead of being able to write off all 15, you'd only be able to write off 10. So now they want to abolish that. And that would cost $1.06 to $1.2 trillion over 10 years. And then Trump wants to remove taxes on Social Security, which would cost $1.6 to $1.8 trillion. And I believe that's included in the stuff I already mentioned. So that's how much money we're going to be spending. We're going to be spending trillions of dollars of extra money that we do not have, and there's no way to raise it. And by 2034, we are estimated to have $50 trillion in debt. That's how much our country is going to be in debt. And Trump also wants to pay for it via tariffs, 60% tariffs on China and 20% on other countries. I've seen mixed reviews about whether that would have to go through Congress or not. Trump did implement tax cuts when he was he did implement tax cuts. He did implement tariffs in 2019 and 2020, I believe, when he was president, and that was without Congress. But these are much more sweeping ones, so I don't know if Trump can do that without Congress. And I'll tell you, I think Republicans are going to be a little bit hesitant, as they already are, especially if there's going to be narrow majorities. Good luck getting this stuff done. They are very hesitant about spending all this extra money, so I would be surprised if all of this gets through. And I'd also be surprised if the markets don't balk like they did in the UK. I mean, that is absolutely insane that Liz Truss delivered that budget, and we're kind of following the same path. And here's the thing: if the markets, here's what happened: people's pension pots were shrunk permanently. The value of the pound dropped. And it blew a $22 billion or billion pound hole in the budget, even though the pound recovered. So we could be, and also interest rate, the Bank of England needed to buy government bonds in order to prop up the market, because it would have prevented, because without that, this is very complicated economic stuff, by the way, and even I don't fully understand. But without it, the value of the gilts, which is government bonds, would have dropped to zero. So the Bank of England needed to buy them out, which caused more inflation at a time when inflation was already really high. So what could happen here? I would think the same thing, where people's pensions could be smaller. But the government will have to spend even more money on interest on servicing the debt, because investors will be less confident in it. Our credit rating could get downgraded. And I think perhaps worst of all is that this will hurt younger people, because younger people will have to deal with this for longer. Older people, especially a lot of our politicians, don't have to worry about this. They're not going to be around for more than a couple years. As a comedian once said, if you are leaving the restaurant, you do not get to order for the rest of the table. All right, that's enough of me ranting for the day. As you can see, government spending and government responsibility is a big passion of mine, and I do hope we can fix this. There was a time I used to believe where we could pay off the debt. I don't think we can do that anymore. It is basically going to be impossible. $34 trillion is basically, I believe that's like $330,000 per adult. $330,000. That's insane. It really is. Anyway, that's pretty much it I have to say for now. I will be back next Monday, and we will talk about probably the debate. I'm probably not going to do a full in-depth, because most people don't really care about the debates. As far as I know, Kamala Harris and Mike Pence, when they debated, that got a decent amount of views because of the pandemic. But the Tim Kaine versus Mike Pence debate was pretty, nobody really remembers that. Tim Kaine didn't do very well anyway. Paul Ryan and Joe Biden, and same with Sarah Palin and Joe Biden. It's really not, presidential debates don't affect the election much, and then the vice presidential debates affect it even less. It's basically just for ratings. So I'm probably not going to do a full in-depth review, and we'll see what happens between now and then. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this slightly shorter episode, and have a great day. Bye-bye.